Hey guys, it's Yorkie here, and I just wanted to let you know quickly before we get into this video that I live stream these races over on the Apex Online Racing YouTube channel at 8 PM GMT time on Thursday evenings. So make sure if you are free on a Thursday to head over to the Apex Online Racing YouTube channel, where you'll find the live streams there and you can get interactive with the live chat and be entertained by myself providing you the racing coverage with commentary in the live stream. That's all I wanted to say just quickly before I get into this video. So yeah, thanks very much. Enjoy. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Apex Online Racing IMSA Lights Endurance Series. Today we will be racing at Circuit of the Americas, and we are kicking off the first season of this IMSA Light Series. Should be a very, very good one. Hopefully the on-track action will be furious and a little bit feisty, but also nice and fair, and we'll have some very good entertainment for you guys. So as this is a new league, I thought I'd take this little moment now to basically introduce the cars that we are going to be racing in this season, because things are a little bit different to what we have raced previously at AOR. So starting off then with our very first class, we have the the LMP3 cars, where we have two choices for the drivers to choose between. We've got the Ginetta G57 LMP3 car and the Ligier JS P3, both of them producing 420 horsepower with a V8 engine and weighing in roughly just under 2,000 pounds. Second class that we have in this series, we are running a multi-class series, is the GT4 class, and both the Cayman and also the Ginetta G55 GT4 cars have been excluded from running in this series for balance of performance reasons. So what the guys and girls have to choose from within the GT4 class, we have the Toyota GT86 Rocket Bunny GT4 car. They have the BMW M3 GT4 E92, the Ford Mustang Boss 302R from 2013, and then there's also a newly updated 2016 Ford Mustang RTR GT4 here. And then there is the Vantage Aston Martin GT4, and finally the KTM Crossbow GT4 car available for choice as well. Now, the majority of the guys in the GT4 class are running the Aston Martin. There is a couple of crossbows. We may see some other cars as well. I believe there is a GT86 Toyota. And then in the LMP3 class, there's the Ginetta G57 and the JSP3. We've got a pretty good split between those two cars, as they are very nicely and evenly balanced. Taking a look at the season calendar, obviously our first round is here at the Circuit of the Americas. Next week, on the 31st of January, we shall be racing at the Watkins Glen GP circuit, and it will be a 90-minute race for that second round. The first round that we are racing today is going to be an hour-long race, 60 minutes, and we also have a 15-minute qualifying session that will precede each of the 6 rounds that we have here on the calendar. Obviously, round 3 at Laguna Seca, back to 90 minutes on the 7th of February. Then we have a week's break for, well, round about Valentine's Day, with the 21st of Feb for round 4, where we're going to be racing for 90 minutes at Long Beach. Round 5, we shall be heading over to Road America on the 28th of February, and then round 6 on the 7th of March, the final race of the season, will be at the Daytona Road Circuit, and that will be a 90-minute race as well. So, as you can see, an all-American calendar, and we are racing with the GT4 and GT3 cars. We are currently just waiting for the lobby to get underway so we can jump into the qualifying session, and there we'll be able to introduce you to the drivers. There's quite a few numbers of drivers that have signed up that I have not recognized or haven't commentated on previously, so it'd be interesting to learn what those guys are like in and amongst the field of drivers, and then there's a few familiar faces here as well, but we'll get on to introducing all of them as well. So I see there's quite a few people in the chat. It's very good to see you all joining us here for this opening round of the IMSA Lights Endurance Series. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them in the chat. I shall try and answer them as best as I can. In terms of the qualifying session that we're going to be leading into in just a moment, it's a 15-minute qualifying session with both classes out on track at the same time. So a bit like the Season 4 Endurance Series that we ran previously, the guys will be needing to fight and kind of work their way in and around the traffic to actually get their qualifying laps. So we are now just coming into the actual session. We're currently loading in, and of course we're at the circuit of the Americas GP. Track that is 3.42 miles in length, 20 turns. There's 11 left-handers and 9 right. A total of 130 feet in elevation change from the lowest point to the highest point around the circuit. And it's going to be a very, very good one for the opening round. It'll give the guys a very good indication as to traffic management, getting them used to working in and around that traffic. And Circuit of the Americas, it being a nice wide track, does allow for some good overtaking and some good battling. It'll be interesting to see how the cars and the drivers handle each other around this track. So let's get you introduced to the drivers then. Here we have Marauder, and as you can see, he is in the KTM Crossbow and the GT4 class. We have Smolder, and he is in the Ginetta G57 LMP3. Marco the Pirate, he is in the Ligier JSP3 LMP3 car. We then got Scott, who is in the Aston Martin V8 Vantage, who's using a very nice V8 Rumble as he exits out the pits. Then we then have Roddy Bird, and he is in the Ginetta G57 LMP3 car. Aid the Ace is coming over from the GT3 League to try his hand at endurance racing. He is in the Ligier JSP3. We then got Brzanczyk, who is also in the Ligier JSP3 car. And we then got Carlito, who is heading out of the pit lane and through turn 1 at the moment in the Aston Martin GT4. We then have Jeremy from the JTS clan or group or team. He is in the Ligier JSP3. We then have Neela, he is in the KTM Crossbow, as you can see there as well. Andrew Harper, you can see, is currently in the pit lane, who is jitting around all over the place. He is in the Ligier JSP3. Andrex is in his all-favourite Aston Martin in the V8 Vantage GT4. We've got Poshdom, who is also in the Aston Martin V8 Vantage as well. Like I did say, there's quite a few of these Aston Martins in this field. Here is another one in the hands of Colonel McCoy. We then have Bonetto, who is in that Ligier JSP3, currently sat in the pit lane at the moment. We then have OTL Dave Alex. He is out in the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. We've got Breakjack 101, who's in the Aston Martin V8 Vantage as well. We've got Maxime Martinez. He is in the Ligier JSP3. Peaches, who's also in the Ligier JSP3. Flaming Parrot, who is in the Ginetta G57 and is just about to start his first flying lap. We then got Intergalactic Gentleman, who is also in that Ginetta LMP3 car. Matt Cooley, who is in the Ligier JSP3 there, coming through turn 16, 17 and 18. We then have GTR Bo, who is in the Ginetta G57, getting caught up behind the Toyota GT86 there. Milo is just starting his flying lap in the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. We've then got Minnesota in the Ligier GSP3, and then Ticklish, Pickle, Wickle, TPW making a return, and he is driving in that Toyota GT86. So a couple of the guys out on track at the moment doing their laps. All the cars actually out on track at the moment. As we can see there, we've got 26 cars in this lobby driving around the circuit at the moment, and we're just waiting for the first set of times to actually appear up on the leaderboard. There we can see that Janetta coming out of the SS section and down the back circuit down towards turn 11. Let's see if we can find an LMP3 car that is just starting a flying lap. So we're right on board with Roddy Bud as he comes up in towards turn 1, braking down, shifting down into the low gears of gear 2 before dropping down the hill into turn 2, the long flat out sweeping right-hander. You bring the car over to the right-hand side before flicking it in left into the start of the SS section. A little bit of a lift. You need to be careful with the curbs coming through this section as they are quite grabby, and you're into this long double right-hander, which is a pretty good place for overtaking in multi-class conditions. Through the left in second gear, and it seems like he may have backed out of a lap here as he doesn't quite seem to be going completely flat out as he comes out through the exit of the SS section. So we've got a few guys actually now putting lap times in. AD Ace being one of them in his Ligier. He's coming through, and it seems like that he is still very much on it. So we're right on board with him for this lap this time round. So coming through that double right-hander in fourth gear, it'll probably drop it down into third, coming into this left-hander, and then drop it down one more gear coming into this very long right-hander. And you want to set yourself up for a good exit, slingshotting out over the top, using all the width of the track available to him as we come down in towards turn 11. And it's crucial to get a good exit out the exit of this corner as you're leading onto a very big long back straight. This is obviously where the guys will be picking up quite a bit of slipstream, and a prime overtaking opportunity will be coming into the next braking zone of turn 12. So the guys get a little bit of a breather as they come down this straight, accelerating up towards 165 miles an hour before slamming on the brakes, hooking up the apex very nicely, using the full width of the track before bringing it back over to the left hand side to then open up this second gear right hander. Be very patient on the throttle through the exit there, and then into this rather awkward and tricky ever tightening turn 15. Getting a good exit and a good drive out of there, you're into the long triple right hander of 16, 17 and 18. He's got a little bit of traffic in front of him, but being in a higher downforce car, he's just able to sail around the outside without really affecting his lap. In through the penultimate corner, don't run out too wide there like he just did, as that will cost your lap and invalidate it. And then the final turn will be a first or second gear corner, but as you can see, AD Ace coming back into the pits. So AD Ace currently on pole, leading by 3.2 seconds to Jeremy, who's currently in second place at the moment. Jumping to the head of the GT4 field, we have Scott here in the Aston Martin, and he currently has a gap of about 6/10 of a second. No, sorry, more than that. A second, 1.4 seconds to Pushdom, who's getting caught in a little bit of traffic, as the guys have just over 8 minutes remaining in this qualifying session. So I'll keep an eye on Pushdom for the moment as he's coming down the back straight. See what kind of speeds GT4 cars reach coming down this straight. So roughly about 146, 147 miles an hour before slamming onto the brakes for this turn before they comes into the arena section that is currently sat in at the moment. So let's have a look at a couple more people. Jeremy coming down this long back straight, as we can see here, is pulled over to one side of the circuit, and it looks like we've got one car that's lagging around a fair amount. Maxime Martinez currently in 7th place, coming through the long triple right-hander. Now he's got a couple of cars up in front of him. He should be able to clear those quite nicely coming onto the start-finish straight, so this shouldn't really impact his lap too much with these two cars here, although that Aston Martin running deep there is obviously going to compromise him on the exit. He's not going to get the drive off of that corner that he would have hoped for, but he should clear the KTM before they get to the braking zone of turn 1, and he'll be on his way for yet another lap. So we're seeing a couple of drivers with penalties at the moment. Marauder here being one of them. He's got a 1 grid place penalty, and then Bernetto. Also, he's actually driving the LMP3 Ligier. He also has a one-place grid penalty as well. That would have been for speeding in the pit lane. Obviously not getting their pit limiter out in time. And we've got a couple of cars there parked on the exit of, or the entry of turn 1, as they are looking to jump back to the pits to set themselves up for another lap. So Brzanczyk coming across the line. It doesn't seem like he's improved on his lap this time round. He could just potentially be starting his flying lap now, and obviously he'll be hoping to improve on his time and see if he can close that gap up to aid the ace, as I believe he's actually jumped ahead of Jeremy. I believe Jeremy was in second position previously. So we'll follow Brzanczyk at the moment. Sorry for absolutely butchering anybody's names in this stream. Guys in the chat, if you can let me know what the quality levels are like, whether audio's good, my mic's good, and then also if the picture quality of the stream is all good as well, that'll be very much appreciated. But yeah, Brzanczyk coming onto the back straight now, so he'll have a little bit of respite as he accelerates up through the gears. Obviously 420 horsepower produced by these lovely burbling V8s. They're not as quick as the LMP2 cars, and certainly not anywhere near as quick as the LMP1 cars. But yeah, the GT3, a great introduction to Le Mans prototype racing and sports car racing in general. And thank you very much for all the confirmations on the quality. Very much appreciated that. So yeah, Brzanczyk just about managing to squeeze up the inside of that Aston Martin as he comes through his long sweeping right-hander. Manages to clear that Aston Martin quite nicely without being hindered too much. Coming into the final turn now, he'll be hoping to get a good run through here and on the exit as well. Try not to run too wide, getting a little bit of a wiggle. So he'll be approaching the line, hoping to improve his time. Does he actually go and do so? Coming across the line now. It doesn't look like he has improved. He's still got 9.4 litres of fuel left in the car, so he's got a fair amount in the tank to continue on running. Let's jump down to the front of the GT4 field, where at the moment Scott, there he is, and his Aston Martin is still leading the way at the moment. He's currently leading his teammate, actually, Andrex, in the similar liveried Aston Martin. But there's a decent gap between those two drivers, and there isn't actually a huge gap between last placed Minnesota in his Ligier in comparison to the front runners Scott and the GT4. So it'll be interesting to see what the field spread is actually like when it actually comes to the race. There is obviously the track map, and you can see where all the guys are around at the moment. So one of the drivers just coming through turn 2 now has a whole good sector or so worth of track in front of him that is completely clear. Minnesota backing out of his lap. There we can see another lagging car at the moment. It seems like all the LMP3 drivers have actually qualified ahead of the GT4 drivers, which is good. And Bo in the Ginetta has actually gone and popped himself now up into second place ahead of Brzanczyk, and Jeremy doing a 1:57.1, still 1.2 seconds off Aid the Ace. Clearly setting good pace at the moment. And looking behind him, a number of guys seem to be on relatively similar pace in the 59s and 2-minute range. And one of the drivers had managed to improve their time. I think it might have been Maxime Martinez, and jumped himself up into 6th position from where he was previously. Smolder in his Ginetta, currently up in 5th place. And obviously, as you see here, a couple of the guys are currently sat in the pit lane as well. So we've got just under 2 minutes remaining now in the qualifying session, and it looks like Smolder's backed out of his lap. And is that Aid the Ace? Yes, it is Aid the Ace who was just passing him on track there, and he's gone a little bit quicker this time round in this sector in comparison to his previous laps. He's got an Aston just here in front of him, but he will sneak up the inside of him as we come into turn 16, 17 and 18. Aston having quite a bit of damage on the front of his car. Hopefully that is only visual though on my end, and he's not actually driving around with that damage. But AD Ace coming into the final turn now. Will he be improving his pole time, or will he not? So coming across the start finish line now, and he does improve his pole time at 1:55.662, extending the gap by another 0.2 of a second. AD Ace on the roll at the moment, so very quick lap times. A number of guys who won't be improving their position at the moment will be Marco the Pirate, as he's currently in the pit lane, Matt Cooley, Intergalactic Gentleman, Bonetto, and also Scott. None of those drivers will be improving their lap times in these final 30 seconds as they're all in the pits. Obviously they won't have the time to get out on track, but AD Ace, Bo, Brzanczyk, if he can get round these last couple of corners before the 20 seconds are up, he may have another shot of doing another lap, but he doesn't. He jumps back to the pits, as well does AD Ace. Jeremy, he's on his final lap at the moment. Smolder, he is coming out of turn 11 and down the long back straight. He'll be on another flying lap. Maxime Martinez, he's reported back to the pits. This is the final lap for Flaming Parrot. He jumps back to the pits as well, so he's not going to improve on his position. Rudy Bird is coming across into the final turn. Will he improve on his position at the moment? Nope, sorry, not the final turn. He's going into turn 11 onto the back straight. So let's jump to a couple of the GT4 cars. Andrex has finished his lap. Pushdom is coming into the pit, so he won't be improving. Brake Check is coming down the start finish straight now, so will he improve his position for 5th in class? Coming across the line, and he does not improve on his time. GTS Carlito, where you're coming down the back straight, and it sounds like that you're still very much on it. And in with lap, Marauder is coming across the start finish line now, so will he improve his position from 7th in class? It doesn't look like he has, but he's only a few hundredths behind Carlito, holding him off for 6th position at the moment. A number of the other guys in the LMP3 class have finished their lap. It's just Rudy and also Bo. Bo's actually coming across the start finish line now. Will he close that gap up to AD Ace? He does, but only by 1/10 of a second, so he does not improve on his position. Rudy Bird coming across the start finish line now. Will he improve on his current position of 8th place? Coming across that line, he does. He pops himself up into 7th, ahead of Flaming Parrot. So now it's just the GT4 drivers that are left remaining. Brake Check seem to have given up or completed his lap, and Carlito coming here into the final turn, so he'll be looking to see if he can try and improve. There's a GT86 behind him as well, who will also be coming across the start finish line. So Carlito currently is in 6th position, pops himself up into 5th. And that is actually our session over, so we won't be able to observe obviously any other drivers. So here are your official standings. AD Ace takes pole with Bo in 2nd, Brzanczyk 3rd, Jeremy 4th, Smolder 5th, Maxime Martinez 6th, Rudy Bird 7th, Flaming Parrot 8th, Marco the Pirate was in 9th, Andrew Harper the top 10 in the LMP3 class, and then the top 10 in the GT4 class comes in the form of Scott. Colonel McCoy beating Andrex to 2nd. Obviously GTS pushed them. They're in 4th place. Carlito in 5th. Brake Check in 6th position. And then unfortunately I didn't see the rest of the drivers, so I'll quickly run through those. Neela in 7th place. Marauder in 8th. Ticklish Picklewickle in 9th place. Milo in 10th. And then in 11th place in the GT4 field is Dave Alex. So if we jump back up to cover the rest of the LMP3s as well, we've got Matt Cooley was in 11th position, Minnesota in 12th, Intergalactic Gentleman in 13th, 14th was Peaches, and then the final LMP3 car is in the form of Bonetto. So all the drivers on the grid, they have a little 2-minute intermission period the guys get a chance to double check their pit strategies, make sure that they have those set, that they're on the correct setup, and basically prepare themselves for the start of the race. Once this 2-minute period has completed, or alternatively all the drivers ready up before that 2-minute period, we will get underway with our first round here at the AOR IMSA Lights Endurance Season 1 season. So, once all the drivers are actually ready, there will be a short moment or a brief pause where none of the drivers will move. They will not be going on the green light. What we do here at AOR instead is we have ourselves a manual formation lap that the guys will drive around the circuit, and they'll be driving around at the speeds of roughly, I believe, 150 kilometers per hour, 80 miles per hour. They'll be driving around, obviously keeping their tires and brakes in temperature, and obviously you can see here the guy's not moving at the moment, and then things do start rolling. But yeah, they'll all stay in the positions that they are in currently. Obviously you can see that a couple of drivers doing a little bit of tire warming, and they want to try and preserve the fuel as well. And then once they've actually got to a certain point around the lap, I believe it's the Pirelli board, in and around just before turn 16, they'll form up into a 2x2 formation, and they'll reduce their speed down to 80 kilometers per hour and 50 miles per hour, and they'll maintain that 2x2 formation until they get to an acceleration zone on the start finish straight. Now, drivers have been all briefed on this, and essentially what will happen is the leader of each class, they are handled separately in terms of the race start. So there'll be a race start for the LMP3s, and then there'll be a race start for the GT4s. But within this acceleration zone, the leader of the classes will accelerate hard, put their foot down on the throttle, and that will signify the start of the race for all other drivers, and all other drivers will then be able to begin and start overtaking once they're crossed that start finish line. So a number of the guys, as you can see in the GT3 cars, doing a little bit of tyre warming, trying to maintain the temperature in their brakes and in their tyres for the moment. And as you can see there up in that track map as well, you can see that there is a break between the LMP3 cars and the GT4 cars. It seems like one of the cars is still lagging around the circuit a fair amount, which is why you would have seen one of the drivers zooming ahead of a lot of the other guys. But yeah, coming through the arena section now of this formation lap. Obviously this is the moment that all the drivers have been practicing for, and they'll be obviously eagerly anticipating the start, hearts pumping, the adrenaline will start flowing, and the tension will start to build. And this is where our 2x2 formation comes in. So you can see that Bo has pulled up alongside Aid the Ace. A lot of the guys will form in behind them to form the two trains, and they'll obviously reduce their speed down to 80 kilometers per hour and 50 miles per hour. Then once they come out of the final turn, I believe it is the end of the curbing on the exit on the outside, that is the start of the acceleration zone, and the end of the acceleration zone is the actual start finish line itself. Anywhere in between there is where Aid the Ace will put his foot down to signify the start of the race. So it's any time now that he can gun it, and that will be our race underway for round one. And we're still patiently waiting, and now it looks like the guys have dropped the gun and they are off for round one, coming in towards turn one. Hopefully the guys managed to keep it clean. It looks like Smolder's having a little bit of a look down the inside of a couple of guys coming in towards the first turn. It looks like all the drivers seem to be pretty clean so far. There's still that lagging car that we've seen. Oh, there's a little bit of contact there between Minnesota and also Matt Cooley. I think it looked like someone else was involved in that as well. If we quickly jump to the GT4 cars, as they are now actually beginning their race as well. Andrex getting a decent start, as it looks like Colonel McCoy has held his position for the moment, with Scott leading the way. A couple of the drivers towards the mid-pack fanning out and trying to make up positions. Hopefully these guys will be able to keep it nice and clean as they come down the hill now, down towards turn 2. There's a little bit of door rubbing there between, I believe that was Carlito and Marauder in the KTM Crossbow, but it looks like that these guys have managed to get through quite nicely without too much of an impact on their race. So jumping back up to the LMP3 cars, Smolder at the moment is coming down the start-finish straight, and he has Brzanczyk up in front of him. The leaders, looks like 3 of them trying to break away slightly in the form of ADA, Bo and Jeremy. Jeremy right all over the back of Bo at the moment as they come through the arena section. If we try and pick up a couple of other cars as well, there's Matt Cooley, who's managing to recover back onto the circuit after the contact that he suffered to the rear of his car earlier on in the race. So jumping back up to the front as ADA will very shortly be coming through the final turn to actually finish the first lap. And we've actually got Andrex here going down the inside of Colonel McCoy. Colonel McCoy moving a little bit under the braking zone, but still fair racing between the two. Both now side by side as they come in towards this next right-hander, the tight right-hander of turn 13. Andrex trying to get the switchback to see if he can gain that second place in class over Colonel McCoy, but at the moment Colonel McCoy doing a very good job of defending, giving Andrex a little bit of a squeeze. Andrex has got the inside line for the next long sweeping right-hander. Surely that's going to allow him to claw and eke ahead of Colonel McCoy. Colonel McCoy though is not giving up, he's still trying to hold on in there. It looks like he will have to consolidate and take that third position. Is now actually coming under heavy pressure from Pushdom behind him as he's having a little bit of a look coming into the final turn. But Andrex with a very nice move, very good battling there between the two drivers, has managed to get himself up into second place to start chasing down his teammate. If we jump back up to the front of the field with the LMP3 cars currently on board with Maxime Martinez as he's coming out of turn 11 onto the back straight. He's got Smolder there up in front of him, and just beyond him we have Brzanczyk. And jumping here, we've got some side-by-side action with Rudy Bird and Flaming Parrot, both in the Ginetta LMP3 cars. Who is going to be the latest of the late breakers coming into this very tight right-hander? It looks like Flaming Parrot has the inside line, taking a tighter line in towards the apex. Rudy Bird coming very, very close to the back of the Ginetta in front of him. I think there may have been the tiniest of little nudges with the slight difference in speed there, but still very good driving between the two. Some nice little bits of racing action that we're seeing here. Smolder still chasing on as he's got Maxime Martinez behind him as well, and it all seems like the top three have spread out a bit. There you can see ADA's up in front of us, and as Bo comes out of the final corner, so too does Jeremy, not too far behind. Jumping back to the GT4 cars, it looks like Andrex has had some trouble somewhere along the line. He's got Marauder, the KTM, up in front of him. He was previously in second place. He's now back up into third, taking the position away from Marauder. Pushed them in front of him. So it looks like there's been a bit of a shuffle. Oh, there's more contact. There's actually a LMP3 car is there in the mix. Marco the Pirate is gone and made contact with a couple of the GT4 cars. I'm wondering if Marco the Pirate is the LMP3 car that we've seen been lagging around the circuit. Hopefully that wasn't an incident between those guys that was caused by lag, as brake check is getting squeezed there by Marauder here in front of him as they come through the very long right-hander. As we got up in front of us Andrex and Pushdom going side by side through the penultimate turn. This is allowing Scott to disappear off into the distance. Marauder also wanted to try and cash in on this battle as well, and you can see that Pushdom having to take a very wide line into the final turn. Has gone and lost the position to Marauder, and he may actually lose the position to Brake Check as Brake Check is trying to look down his inside, coming in towards the first turn. Marauder going defensive on these two guys into this first turn. Oh, Marauder there, Pushdom there, trying to switch back underneath Brake Check, but that did not quite work out for him. Brake Check moving himself up into 4th place. Andrex resumes his position back up into 2nd place, but he does have Marauder all over the back of him. Jumping back a little bit further back down the field, we've got a battle here with Dave Alex. He's got Carlito in front of him and Milo directly behind him, his teammate. These guys are battling for 8th, 9th and 10th position in class as they are coming through the S's section at the moment. And there isn't any real passing opportunity through there. Relatively soon we may see the LMP3 cars start to come in towards the back end of the field of these GT4 cars, and it looks like we've got one driver in the pits who has retired from the race that I can see there on the track map. So this battle for 8th place is going to resume, coming out onto the long back straight as Milo, Dave Alex's teammate who we're currently watching at the moment, seems to get a better run out onto this back straight as they're coming down, and it looks like potentially there was a couple of guys going pretty close but not quite. So we'll resume back to this battle once again. It's Dave Alex, holding on to this position at the moment. No real issue for him, though he did get a little bit screwy there, and there may have been a little bit of contact. There was contact between the two teammates. There's some damage to the front of Milo's car, and there's damage to the side of Dave Alex's car. Hopefully there isn't too much suspension damage that is being caused from that. Jumping further up the field, Colonel McCoy, who was up in the 2nd and 3rd positions earlier on, he's had some troubles and is now down in 6th position in the GT4 class. He has pushed them there directly in front of him. He seems to be struggling a little bit and has dropped back a few car lengths off the battle of Brake Check and Marauder, who are out there in front of him. Let's jump up, back up to the LMP3 battles. We've got 3 cars here relatively close together, with Intergalactic Gentleman trying to chase down Peaches at the moment, and he's got Bernito not too far behind him. He's picking up a slipstream as we're coming in towards the braking zone. Having a little bit of a look to the inside. Will he go for the move? He will go for the move. Will he be able to make that move stick though? Coming into the actual apex of the corner, it looks like he has managed to do so, and it looks like that Bernito has managed to capitalize on Peaches being a little bit cautious into that braking zone as well, and he's also gained a position. So Peaches dropping down from 12th place, losing 2 positions and dropping down into 14th. Coming back up to the front of the field, as actually I believe Aid the Ace is now actually, yes he is, he's in and amongst all the GT4 cars. So now in comes the traffic factor, where the guys will have to be patient, take their time and pick the right moments to try and switch back and pass the drivers around them. And unlike single class racing, things work a little bit different here in multi-class racing when it actually comes to lapping other cars. The slower class drivers and the cars that are being lapped are not obliged to move out of the way of the faster class drivers. Instead, they are instructed to hold their racing line, as that makes it a lot more predictable for the guys in the faster cars. And then the faster cars will go around them, as Bo's looking to the inside of the Aston Martin there. He's got Jeremy coming up and closing up onto him and applying some pressure here for 2nd place. Jeremy managing to get around the outside of the Aston Martin without too much trouble, but he's now all over the back and actually looking to the inside of Bo. Bo's going to have to try and switch back here if he's going to try and defend the position, or not. He's going to go try and hold it around the outside. It's going to give him the inside line for turn 16, 17 and 18 here, and it looks like he is just about managing to hold on to that 2nd position for now. You can see there up in front, Aid the Ace working his way through a little bit of traffic, and there you can see the difference in speed between the LMP3 cars and the GT4 cars. So much more downforce on these LMP3 cars that they close up quite tremendously on the GT4 cars in the corners, and then they have a little bit more straight line speed as well, which allows the guys to accelerate a little bit harder and faster out the corners. And then obviously, Bo there almost losing the rear end. Jeremy almost losing the rear end as well. Bo was losing it on the entrance to the corner. Jeremy on the exit. We've got Aid the Ace here coming up to some lap traffic as well. He's going to need to be cautious. This could be one of those situations where he'll see his lead disappearing, but that's just one of the things with multi-class racing. It's all about luck and then timing. the luck element comes in with where you actually find the guys around the circuit. Like there, he got held up by that KTM, he just had to wait, but there's the much safer option to do so. There's no point in trying to dive bomb down the inside of the GT4 class car. So Jeremy's having a look on the inside of Bo, coming into turn 11. Very, very close there to making contact, but they managing to avoid doing so. Jeremy once again picking up the slipstream of Bo as they come down this long back straight now. I've got an Aston Martin here to contend with as well. Will that be a factor coming into this corner? Jeremy having a look to the inside. The Ginetta in front of us of Bo having a look to the inside of Andrex, I believe that is. Jeremy now going to the outside. Fortunately, Andrex saw Bo coming and gave him a little bit of room, which is very good and very kind of him, so that could have ended in tears potentially. You see that the different lines going into turn 15. It's quite an interesting and awkward corner. Let's jump up to Maxime Martinez, who's currently chasing down Smolder at the moment for 5th position. They're going to be in and amongst the traffic as well. And actually jumping back here, you can see Colonel McCoy is still there, chasing down Brake Check 101. He has managed to get himself past Pushton in the last couple of laps off screen, so we've unfortunately missed that pass for position. But Colonel McCoy now up into 5th place, and Scott is coming out now, and he is now being lapped by AD Ace. Very nice and easily there. Scott got a very nice gap between himself and Andrex, fellow driver, his teammate, who's just coming through turn 2, so he's got a very good gap there between the two of them. Oh, Jeremy going across the inside of the circuit there. Potential slight mistake coming into the Yesser section, possibly catching one of the curbs that tugged the car off the track. So obviously he would have slowed down to avoid getting a slowdown penalty. He's now going past Scott in his Aston Martin through that little kink there of turn 10, and they will continue on their way. Obviously with that mistake from Jeremy, that has gone and dropped him off the back of Bo, and there's a gap now of just under 2 seconds. So jumping back up here, we've got Smolder. I'm going to look to the inside of Brezanchik as they come into turn 11. He's got the Pirelli there, car of, I believe, Colonel McCoy in his Aston Martin, and they're going now past Brake Check, which means that Pushton has gone and lost an awful lot of ground somewhere along the line. Potential mistake by him. But let's jump back up to this battle as Smolder's trying to pick up the slipstream on Brezanchik. Is not going to try and make the move, coming into the tight left-hander here at the end of the straight. Instead, he's just going to take his time and see if traffic will potentially be a factor and allow him to close up that gap a little bit more and put himself in slightly better position to try and fight his way past us. Actually, Brezanchik was trying to get up the inside there of Andrex coming into that corner, which may have compromised both of their lines a little bit. Smolder going around the outside there of Andrex in the long triple right-hander. And drivers obviously doing a very good job at the moment. Things seem to be relatively clean. We've had a little bit of bits of contact here and there, but there hasn't been anything too massively major that I can see. We've only had 1 retirement so far. Actually, no, sorry, scratch that. 2 retirements so far. We started the race with 26 drivers. We're now down to 24. And I'm seeing that Rudy Bird has a penalty of 1 second at the moment. So that would have been a track limits penalty. So we're currently watching Brake Check. Jumping across that inside curb, he'll need to be careful that he doesn't get a slowdown warning for doing so, as he was getting lapped by one of the Ligier LMP3 cars. Still has Colonel McCoy there behind him, and he's now got a Ginetta actually coming up behind them as well. So this is a good passing opportunity for the Ginetta if he has the run and has timed it right to get past one of these Aston Martins, which he has now done so. But that's going to cost Colonel McCoy a fair amount of time as well. I can see him here, the Ginetta not quite getting the line that he wanted coming out of the Yesser section. Colonel McCoy has gone and lost a whole load of ground to Brake Check in that instance of being lapped there. As Marauder was getting lapped as well by one of the Ligiers. that we can see up in front of us. So Marauder in his KTM crossbow on this back straight. You can see in the distance there Andrex, as he'll be having the Ligier coming up behind him relatively soon. You see him there within a car length now, and manages to pass him quite nicely. So we are 40 minutes into this hour-long race. 20 minutes have passed so far, and Minnesota is in the pits and has retired to the pit box, so he will no longer be participating in this race. Now, one thing I was going to mention is the fuel loads of the drivers and whether they'll actually be able to manage the entire race distance. And I saw some of the guys actually in the chat as well discussing this as to whether the cars will be able to do the full 60 minutes on one tank of fuel. So jumping up to our leader of 8 the Ace, as you can see there, he's roughly got 59-60 odd litres of fuel in the tank. Now if we jump to the GT4 cars, they've got 87.5 litres in the hands of Scott. So you can see there's a good 25 or so litres difference between the LMP3 cars and the GT4 cars. Now the GT4 cars should be able to do the full race distance without making the stop. However, I believe the LMP3 cars may have to make a splash and dash somewhere along the line, unless the drivers are going with an alternative strategy and trying to eke out their fuel load to make it last the entire race distance. So 8 the Ace coming through. See if we can try and pick up some battles somewhere along the line. We can see here Brake Check and Marauder still relatively close together. A bit further back down the field, we have Neela going for a spin. Can he keep it out of the wall? He does manage to do so. The gravel trap there helping him. He's just coming into the ESA section. Probably caught the curb a little bit awkwardly, unfortunately for him. But yeah, he's managed to obviously find a fair, decent, clear amount of track, and he was able to rejoin the track. But there was no damage incurred on his car, which is good. We can jump up to Carlito now as he's coming into turn 11, and he's got TPW just under a second in front of him, and then Milo just over a second behind, and he's also got a Ligier there in relatively close proximity, and obviously the Ligier will clear this little three-way fight before they get to the braking zone. However, there is also a Ginetta coming up behind them as well. Carlito not close enough to have a look down the inside of TPW, but TPW did kind of almost half leave the door open there. Carlito needs to be careful with this Ginetta behind. The Ginetta also needs to obviously be careful and make sure that he's reading Carlito right and chooses the right moment to try and make the pass, because obviously the Ginetta doesn't want to try and interfere with the battles too much and try and upset the guys, but at the same time he needs to try and get past relatively quickly without losing too much time. So he's going around the outside of Carlito now. He's gone quite far out wide there and hasn't managed to make the pass on TPW as of yet, but may need to do so coming down the inside here. We've got Scott in the pit lane. Why was Scott in the pit lane? That's very interesting. I don't think he was needed for fuel. Scott's got damage to the front of his car. So either he's had contact with another driver somewhere along the line, or he's had an off and has hit the wall, or some other kind of trackside object that's gone and encouraged damage to the front of his car. So he must have gone in for repairs in that case, which has gone and handed first position in class to his teammate Andrex. You can see who's on the run down towards turn 11. So that's very unfortunate for Scott there. Andrex getting very, very close to the back of that Ligier in front of him. Marauder there now inherits second place with Brake Check behind in third. Colonel McCoy not too far behind. He has dropped back off a little bit off the back of Brake Check, but he is still very much there and within obviously visual range of the two cars in front of him. And yeah, Scott having that unfortunate moment somewhere along the line that's going to put him down into 5th. Pushed him not too far behind in 6th position at the moment in his Aston Martin. There you can see Colonel McCoy up in front of us as he's getting lapped by one of the Ligiers. Coming into the braking zone. Oh, Colonel McCoy going a little bit deep there into that left-hander of turn 12. A fair bit tidier coming through turn 13, but still probably not quite hooking up the apex quite as nicely as he would be hoping for. And then into the rather awkward turn 15. Pushed him running a little bit deeper than Colonel McCoy there. Carlito, you see here he's got some company behind him in the form of Milo and his Aston Martin there. Both of these guys got a little bit of damage to the front of their cars. Carlito also got a little bit of damage to the rear of his car. And then not too far behind Milo is also TPW, who's got some damage on the front of his car as well. So I think there may have been a couple of cars having a few little bits of coming together. We've got Matt Cooley in the pit lane. He's taking on fuel. Just saw that he had 0-0. Is he now taking on tyres? It doesn't look like he's taking on tyres, but he's probably repairing some damage. So that is going to be a little bit of a frustration for Matt Cooley, as he's now going to drop well down the field. And Peaches, as he's coming across the start-finish line now, will take that position and demote Matt Cooley down into 13th place in class. And we've got Andrew Harper here. That's one of the drivers who seems to be lagging for me, unfortunately. There we can see Bazanchik, who's done a 2:16 on his previous lap, so possibly he's been in the pit somewhere along the lines. Just having a look at the lap times of the drivers. The Ace doing in the high 59s at the moment, with Bo behind in the 2:01. Obviously, traffic is going to have an effect on the lap times as well, and you can see here Aid the Ace going past Scott as they come down the long back straight, and he's got a Ginetta there in front of him as well. Excuse me, Ginetta moving nicely out of the way, which is what the drivers who are being lapped within the same class of each other will need to do. It's only when lapping another slower class do the slower class drivers hold their line, but the usual F1 blue flags, shall I say, apply when you are lapping or being lapped by other cars in the same class as your own. Colonel McCoy very close to the back of Brake Check. Coming into the penultimate turn, Brake Check running a slightly better line is going to eke that gap back out a little bit, extended it by a couple of car lengths. Who will get a decent drive coming off of the final turn to start yet another lap. Leader of the race currently on lap 13 at the moment. And Colonel McCoy is not going to be close enough this time round into the first turn to mount an attack on Brake Check in front of him. Oh, let's get very, very close there too. I believe that's Aid the Ace coming up behind them, going through. Yes, it is. He does manage to clear the Aston Martin of Brake Check before they get to the S section. Brake Check putting in a strong, solid performance in this debut race. I haven't seen him in any other leagues that I have commentated on or raced in. He may have potentially have been in another split in, say, the GT3 league, but he's doing pretty well at the moment, currently holding that final podium position of 3rd place in the GT4 class. He's coming under pressure though from Colonel McCoy coming into turn 11. He's got the lap drivers of Bo there, who does manage to sneak up the inside on the switchback, coming onto the long back straight. Actually, that's a better shot there, as it looks like Colonel McCoy has managed to get the better drive coming out of turn 11, and Brake Check is having to concede the position. But will he try and mount a challenge coming back in? That's Marauder. Sorry, I wanted Brake Check. There we go. He's not really going to be able to challenge, but Colonel McCoy going a little bit deep there into the braking zone. He's got another Ginetta coming up behind them as well, so he'll need to give up the inside line, give up the apex to let the Ginetta through. Ginetta playing patient at the moment, sitting in between the two Aston Martins as Brake Check and Colonel McCoy get very, very close to that Ginetta there, as the Ginetta was trying to switch back underneath. Now the Ginetta is going around the outside of Colonel McCoy. Shouldn't affect him too much. But yeah, Brake Check very, very close there to making contact as the Ginetta actually goes and runs deep in the penultimate turn there. Colonel McCoy has now managed to get himself up into third position, and Scott behind them is closing this gap up at quite a rapid rate. You can see that the previous lap times of Colonel McCoy and Brake Check, they will change in just a second though. So Colonel McCoy does a high 2 minute 18, Brake Check does a high 2 minute 19, and then Scott doing a pretty mid to high 2:15, so a good 3 to 4.5 seconds faster than the two guys in front. So give it another lap or so and there will be, or Scott will be within a second of Brake Check in front of him. Milo's going side by side with Carlito coming down the start-finish straight. He's actually looked like he's going to gain that position before they actually reach the braking zone of turn 1, which is going to allow him to consolidate the position, providing he doesn't drop it on the corner. Just about manages to hold it and keep it in a half spin, but that does mean that he wasn't able to take that 7th position in class, 19th overall, away from Carlito in front of him, and instead remains in 8th position. And we see here Brake Check. Oh, Jeremy has picked up a penalty on this lap, a 3-second penalty as well. Rudy Bird has still got his 1-second penalty, and also noticed that Nyla, has a Milo, not Nyla, reading the wrong name there, has a 2-second penalty applied to his name as well. So yeah, very unfortunate there for Jeremy picking up that penalty. He's now actually dropped quite far back from the rear of Bo's car as well. He was there lurking in and around about a second, but has now dropped back down to about 8-9 seconds behind Bo. Aid the Ace still leading the way out in front. How is Scott doing in his pursuit of P4 and P3 in front of him? There are the guys up ahead. Looks like there was an LMP3 car between us and them. No, sorry, my mistake. That is Brake Check. That is the car that is immediately in front of us. It's got Colonel McCoy, and they're currently lapping TPW in his Toyota GT86 at the moment. TPW, where you are currently in last position in class, is moving out of the way without hindering Brake Check too much. But Scott, once again on that previous lap, another 2 minute 15.7, very consistent pace. Colonel McCoy has managed to find a good half a second or so over his previous lap, although on his previous lap he was overtaking and battling Brake Check. He's now in the 2:17, and then Brake Check also improving by half a second or so. But still, Scott at the moment is the one setting the pace in the GT4 cars. And then Aid the Ace and Bo seem to be pretty even on pace, both doing low 2 minute 58, sorry, not 2 minute 15s. Sorry, 1 minute 58s. I'm reading GT4 times here. 1 minute 58s at the front of the field. Obviously Jeremy having his mistake somewhere along the line has cost him time, and there you can see in that one shot, you can see obviously Marauder in front of us, Colonel McCoy, who we're currently on board with, Brake Check, and then Scott. Scott is not too far from the back of Brake Check now, and has been closing up over the last couple of laps with that blistering pace that he has. 26 minutes, just under 27 minutes remaining in round 1 here of season 1 of the Apex Online Racing IMSA Lights Endurance Series. Oh, Scott there catching the curb on the inside, forcing him to have to try and catch the car and save it. Back out a little bit. Colonel McCoy coming up onto the back of Marauder that we can see here. So Marauder has gone and made a mistake somewhere along the line, because he's gone and lost a whole heap of time. The next lap time should reflect that. 2:18.1. Conor McCoy's just gone and picked up the pace even more. He's now actually having a look to the outside of Marauder coming into turn 1, trying to have a little bit of a look on the switchback. Scott isn't close enough to have a look at brake check, but has got a much better run coming off of turn 1 and into turn 2, so he's going to close the gap up even more as well. Surely he's not going to have a look coming into the inside of the S's section. Instead he's just going to have to tuck in and follow him for the moment. There's no real passing opportunity through here, even though there's such a pace difference between these two guys at the moment. As Scott's having a look round the outside, it's going to be the inside coming into this left-hander on driver's right on brake check, and he does manage to get the pass done as he comes out through the exit of the S's section. Scott moving himself up into 4th place to begin his race recovery after previously being well out in the lead and then incurring damage and having to repair that damage. So his next target will be Colonel McCoy up in front of him. Brake check will be wanting to try and keep his sights locked in on the rear of Scott's car and trying not to lose too much time. As we see there, Janetta in shot, passing Scott there in front of us. Colonel McCoy still chasing down Marauder, as we can see here. Coming into the arena section. Janetta behind us isn't quite close enough yet to really make any issue. Colonel McCoy there seeming like he's just getting out of the way of the Janetta and let him go up the inside to try and avoid losing too much time with the lap traffic, as Marauder now has the Janetta down his inside. That's going to push him out wide. This could be Colonel McCoy's potential opportunity. He's actually a little bit further back than I had anticipated. So there's a good 4 to 5 car lengths there between the front of the Aston Martin and the rear of that KTM. Colonel McCoy backing the rear end of the car into that final turn a little bit, holding on to that very nicely. As we can see there, Ligier going into the inside to lap Colonel McCoy, not really interfering with the battle too much, which is good to see. It'll be down the inside of the KTM coming through turn 2, and once again Scott, despite actually making the pass on brake check on that previous lap, doing a low 2 minutes 16, a good 2 seconds faster than the two guys in front of him. So we'll jump on board with Scott, which will give us a nice view of the two guys up in front and the gap that we can see between them at the moment diminishing, as we can see. And a good run coming out of the SS section. Scott's car just looking to be quite a bit more manageable and stable than certainly Colonel McCoy's Aston Martin in front of him. Be lining up a good exit here to come onto this long back straight, and now he'll be in the slipstream. There is that aerial shot, and we'll be able to see whether he does close up in the slipstream or not. It doesn't really seem like he is going to be doing so, but this KTM has got quite a bit less straight line speed than the two Aston Martins that are behind him. Scott is trying to go around the outside of Marauder. Scott going deep. This is going to allow Colonel McCoy going deep. Scott now put himself up into 3rd place. He's now looking to the inside of Marauder, trying to take that 2nd position, and he's managed to do so. 2 positions in the sequence of 2 or 3 corners. Marauder has now got Colonel McCoy all over the rear of his car, and surely with the pace that Scott has, he is going to pull away from these guys and leave them to squabble over that final podium position. Colonel McCoy obviously having the run on Marauder coming down that back straight, but outbraked himself a little bit into that turn 12 that sent him deep and just invited Scott to take the position away. And then obviously he had the decent run to the inside to take that position, as Colonel McCoy's got a decent run himself off of the final turn. Is going to be passing Marauder before we get to turn 1. Marauder want to be picking up the slipstream here into the braking zone of this first turn, see if he can try and claw back the position. Colonel McCoy has gone and put himself up into third place for the moment. Obviously, two very different cars in the GT4 class. The Aston Martin having quite a bit more straight line speed, but as you can see, the KTM has quite a lot more stability and better handling through the corners. So, two very different methods and concepts of finding lap time around this circuit. Obviously, the corners in the first sector and the final sector will help Marauder in terms of lap time. However, it is this second sector here where he will lose out to the Aston Martin that is in front of him, especially if he hops over the curb like that. He will be wanting to try and avoid picking up a slowdown penalty. But there you can see just the speed difference between the two cars in terms of straight line performance. Obviously this is a very, very long back straight, but it does allow the Aston Martins to really stretch their legs over this KTM and pull away. As once again Colonel McCoy has gone deep into that braking zone there of turn 12 and has actually gone and lost the position to Marauder. Marauder managing to keep it between the white lines and has gone and retaken that third place. So Scott has got all his work to do it all over again to try and retake that third position. We can see Peaches here in the pit lane serving a pit stop. It doesn't look like he's taking on fuel, and it doesn't look like that the LMP3 cars will need to take fuel in this race, judging by my rough estimates. We've got just under 20 minutes of the race remaining, and the guys have got 30 litres of fuel, so they should, I think, be able to do the full race distance. Whoa, that's a Ligier there, lagging very heavily and appearing rather suddenly on the inside of the corner next to Aid the Ace. Fortunately, that didn't hamper him in any way, which is good. Bodo coming down the start-finish line, about 7 seconds off the back of Aid the Ace. Still setting pretty good, solid, consistent lap times. Both of them still in the 58s. Bo about 0.4 of a second quicker on the previous lap, and Jeremy actually matching Bo on that previous lap as well. So Jeremy's still got plenty of pace in him. He's having a very good, solid race at the moment in third. Obviously, he had that unfortunate mistake which dropped him off the back of Bo, and obviously that's kind of taken him out of contention for P2 unless Bo has an incident or some kind of issue later on in the race. Let's jump up to Brzanczyk, as he's got a car pretty close in front of him. It is that lagging Ligier. I believe it is Andrew Harper who's the one who seems to be lagging and jumping around, but these two guys are in relatively close proximity to each other. They are battling for position as well. You see that? Oh, that's more lag there. That must be pretty distracting for Brzanczyk if he is seeing the same as what I am seeing here. The guys could be seeing something very different. But Peaches has actually dropped down the field, down into 15th position overall, and he's actually just past that KTM crossbow. I believe that is Marauder. Yes, it is. Marauder behind him, passing him for actual overall position. So these two guys are on the same lap at the moment, but obviously Marauder's not going to really be able to hold a candle to the pace of the LMP3 car that is just past him. But even still, it's only your class position that matters, not your overall race position. It looks like Colonel McCoy has had some more trouble somewhere along the line and has now dropped off the back of Marauder. Gap has increased to 4.5 seconds or so. It seems like the field has spread out a fair amount. So let's see, Scott is now up into obviously second position as we saw previously. He's got a gap of 2.5 seconds to his teammate in front of him, and on the previous lap he was 1.5 seconds faster. So again, Scott, the man on the move at this relatively late stage of the race, is closing up the gap to his teammate in front of him. We just saw him there flashing the front of the shot. Scott has got the generator coming up behind him, but that should pass him as we come into the braking zone of turn 11 here and not hamper him too much. You obviously want to let that generator pass, as the less time that you can spend side by side with a car that is passing you, the less time that you'll lose, and you can focus back on your race once again. So there you can see in the distance Scott's teammate Andrex. This is the view on board with Scott, shifting down through the gears, running a little bit deep there, missing the apex slightly, but managing to gather it up quite nicely. Beautiful rumble of the Aston Martin V8. Thundering away underneath the front bonnet. And there goes Eligio to pass him. I believe that'll be Jeremy. Off and on his way. See there, Scott looking very nice, planted, very stable. Just working the wheel just a tiny little bit. Nothing too major. Obviously we're not seeing quite 100% accurate wheel inputs, but you do get a rough idea as to how much input they're actually putting in. So he comes across the line now to take about half a second out of Andrex on that previous lap. Obviously there was a little bit of traffic. Andrex, probably seeing his teammate coming, has also gone and picked up his pace a little bit as well to try and hold on to the lead that he currently has. But give it another lap or two, we'll probably see these two guys getting pretty close, bumper to bumper. So we're into the final 15 minutes now. Guys still have plenty of fuel on board, as you can see. Scott there with 54 litres. Andrex got 25, so I think Scott may have actually taken fuel on during the pit stop. If we have a look at the other cars, 34 for Marauder, 45 for brake check as well, 48 for push them. So varying amounts of fuel loads. Probably a number of guys just playing it very safe and taking the maximum amount of fuel that the fuel tank can possibly hold. Which if Scott did do, then that's really quite impressive pace, because obviously the more the fuel bleeds off over the course of the race, pace tends to increase as well, providing that you have the tyres underneath you and in a good, nice stable condition. And you can see the gap to Andrex there in front of us, continuing to close down and shrink in size. Excuse me a second, as taking a swig of water. Coming through in towards the penultimate turn. It'll be interesting to see the lap times of the drivers this time round. On this previous lap, you can see that the gap has visibly closed between the two Aston Martin drivers. Just by how much is the question. So a 2 minutes 16.7 for Andrex and a 2:15.4 for Scott. So over a second, 1.3 seconds faster on that previous lap, and the gap is there lingering in and around a second between Andrex and his teammate. They come through the SS section. It'll be interesting to see just how much of a fight, if any fight at all, Andrex is going to put up against his teammate. Or whether there'll be team orders, or whether Andrex will just concede the position. Obviously a very wise and experienced head on the shoulders of Andrex. He'll probably make Scott work for it a little bit, but not fight too hard and risk a chance of them both being taken out of the race, because obviously the two drivers being teammates, the points that they'll be scoring for this race in their current positions will be quite substantial and will be very, very useful for that team championship, as we've got a Ligier coming up the inside. Ooh, that's a little bit dangerous there. If anything, you kind of want the guys in the faster class to actually commit to making that overtake rather than backing out of it. I know he didn't want to interfere with Scott too much, as this is the battle for the lead in class, but at the same time it's better to be safe and predictable than be going for a move and then deciding against it halfway through. I think the Ligier is going to wait until the start-finish straight before he tries to make the pass on the two drivers that are here in front of him. So here we go then to begin yet another lap. There goes the Ligier. Scott picking up the slipstream of his teammate Andrex in front. It's not going to be close enough to make the move coming into this first turn. Oh, Andrex is getting squeezed out on the exit there by the Ligier. That's actually going to cost Andrex the position. Scott has got himself up into second place. Is Andrex going to fight this a little bit? I'm sure he's probably going to concede the position coming into the S's section. No, he's going to make it work for it. They're going side by side through the S's. This is fantastic battling between the two drivers. Eventually, Andrex does have to concede the position to his teammate Scott, but that was very unfortunate there for Andrex. That hand very much being forced by the lapping Ligier, squeezing him on the exit of turn 1. It's allowed his teammate to get past and up into the lead. But it'll be interesting to see if Andrex can dial himself into the rear of Scott's car, obviously without making contact, but try and hold on to the back of him and see if he can put some pressure onto Scott and try and retake that lead. Very unfortunate there for the Aston Martin driver. We'll jump up to the LMP3 cars as we've got Flaming Parrot here within a second of Smolder, both of them in the Ginetta G57. So looking at some LMP3 action as we've got a Ligier there in front of, I believe that'll be brake check in the Aston Martin GT4 car that we see. There we can see the Ligier moving quite nicely out of the way to not interfere with these guys. Hopefully it doesn't actually interfere with brake check's run either. Looks like he will do a little bit, but brake check will let that Ligier go, as he'll have much better pace coming through these corners. But yeah, Flaming Parrot on the rear of Smolder, just 0.4 of a second between the two Ginetta drivers here. So they're coming through the arena section there. A little bit of a lock up there for Smolder, I believe. Saw a little bit of a puff of smoke come off the inside of his cars. We're now into the triple right-hander. Flaming Parrot in the dirty air a little bit there, having to lift off slightly, coming through the corner to try and keep the car on the black stuff and within the confines of the circuit. And if I am judging this correctly, no, the two guys are slightly further apart than I had anticipated. I thought there were just a tenth or two between them, but you can see there Scott starting to eke away from Andrex. You can see how much time that Andrex lost on the previous lap at 2:19.4 to Scott's 2:17.7. A whole heap of time there that he's gone and lost. But let's jump back up to this fight for 4th position. It's Flaming Parrot still chasing down Smolder in front of him, coming through the S section, as you can see, just balancing the throttle, using the downforce of the LMP3 cars to navigate their way through the S section. Catching the curb there a little bit on the inside. That slightly unsettled the car, but he managed to hold on to that quite nicely. It's gone and allowed Smolder to extend his gap slightly though. Well, Flaming Parrot's done a very good job of closing that gap back up under braking for turn 11 onto this back straight. Gap is now within 1 second. They're coming in towards the braking zone. Here we can see the GT4 leaders in the foreground of the shot. Slight lock up under braking there for Flaming Parrot. These LMP3 cars do not have any assists at all. No traction control, no stability control, no ABS. So it's all down to driver skill. As the Ginetta drivers are lapping second place Andrax at the moment. Andrax doing a decent job of not hindering Smolder. Although Flaming Parrot is kind of trying to look to the inside a little bit of Andrax here. Looking for a little bit of cooperation. He does manage to do so, but he's going to lost a whole heap of time to Smolder in front of him. But I believe Smolder got held up a little bit in that penultimate corner there when trying to pass Scott. Manages to do so quite nicely in the final turn. Now Flaming Parrot picking up the slipstream, and we'll be passing him in the run into the first turn. So he won't lose too much time there doing that. Jumping back up to the battle for 4th position in GT4. Marauder now has Colonel McCoy once again for company. These guys were relatively close earlier on in the race, and then Colonel McCoy dropped off the back of Marauder to a gap of around about 5-6 seconds. But he's managed to close that back up. There's only 4 temps off the back of the KTM in front of him. He'll be picking up the slipstream, and the run is looking to the inside as we're coming up towards turn 1 and into the braking zone. Colonel McCoy going for the move to take 4th position. Running a little bit deep there as Marauder has managed to switch back underneath him. They avoid making contact, and Marauder holding on to that 4th place for the moment. This is where the KTM will have the edge over the Aston Martin, and will probably eke out a gap. As we come through this SS section, you can see it growing a little bit as the guys are navigating their way through a sequence of turns, very reminiscent of Maggots and Beckett's at Silverstone. And McCoy closing up a little bit under the Constantina effect, but you can see that the gap has increased from when they entered the SS section in that first sector. However, this is where the Aston Martin will have that upper hand over the KTM in front of him. So he'll be looking to get a good drive coming off onto this back straight, and you'll be able to see the Aston Martin closing up under the slipstream as he has more power. KTM not going defensive as they come in towards the heavy braking zone for this next right-hander. Colonel McCoy taking that position for the moment. It doesn't look like Marauder's really going to challenge too much, although he's coming back underneath. There is contact between the 2 drivers on the exit. Hopefully that hasn't affected them too much and hasn't incurred too much damage, but Marauder is back up into 4th position once again. You can see just how much more stable that KTM is in comparison to the Aston Martin. It's Colonel McCoy struggling a little bit under braking. We've seen it a couple of times in the heavy braking zone there. Colonel McCoy running a little bit deep and struggling to hold the car through the corner as again he gets a huge tank slapper on through the long right-hander there. Just about manages to hold on to it. We've got an LMP3 car coming up behind. He'll be looking to the inside in the final turn. Colonel McCoy though not really being hindered too much by that, and once again he'll be looking to see if he can mount a challenge on Marauder coming in towards turn 1. Marauder was looking to pick up the slipstream of the DGA before it disappeared. Marauder once again not going defensive, but Colonel McCoy is going up the inside into this first turn. Marauder will be looking to try and get the switch back once again, but doesn't look like he's going to be able to do it this time round. Marauder there is going to have to sit in and tuck in behind the Aston Martin. Will he be able to try and mount a challenge through the SS section though? Has a little bit of a look there upon the entry, but it wasn't quite the space there as Colonel McCoy shut the door on him and prevented that opportunity from coming to fruition. Coming through, you can see Marauder is just so eager to be a little bit more aggressive through the SS section as he can run a much more stable and quicker line, a quicker pace through that SS section. But now this is where the Aston Martin will end up pulling away from the KTM as they come onto this back straight. And there you can see visually the gap increasing between the 2 drivers. See About 135 for... Oh, there's a little bit of lag there between a couple of the guys. I'm hoping that that hasn't actually affected the two drivers. We've got the Ligier up the inside of Marauder, who's going to be there on the outside of Colonel McCoy. Coming around this section as we're into the dying minutes now. You can see Colonel McCoy has only got 8.5 litres of fuel left in the tank, but that should be enough to finish the race. He's gone a little bit deep though into that turn 15, coming into turn 16. Sorry, turn 16, 17 and 18. See if Marauder can close that gap up to the Aston Martin in front of him. It doesn't look like he'll be able to, as we see that Ligier jumping around a fair amount. I'm hoping that's not affecting the other drivers. I'm hoping that is just an issue on my end. It does seem to be the only driver that seems to be having that issue for me. Everyone else has been stable throughout the entire duration of this race. And here we can see 8 the Ace coming down the back straight. We'll jump to him as this will be the final lap of the race. Doesn't seem like Marauder is quite close enough to the back of Colonel McCoy to really mount a challenge. It's saying that they are back within a second, however, coming through the S section, but I imagine providing that Colonel McCoy can keep the car facing in the right direction, he'll continue to eke that gap out once he gets into the second sector and onto that back straight where the Aston Martin can really start to stretch its legs. So here comes Scott through the long triple right-hander. We'll quickly jump up to see where the leader of GT4 is. He's coming through the arena section now. So 8 the Ace just coming out of the second to last turn and is coming into the final turn now. This is going to be the end of the first round here of the Apex Online Racing IMSA Lights Endurance Series, and 8 the Ace takes the win in the LMP3 class. Bo just coming out of the second to last turn will be coming through the final turn now as he puts a lap on the Ginetta that we can see there in the background. Bo with a good solid race, picking up second place in the LMP3 class as well. Jeremy is a bit further back down the lap, so we'll jump to Scott as he's just come across the line to take the win in GT4. Andrex taking home second place. Obviously maximum points for the two Aston Martin drivers there. A brake check is coming in to the second to last turn as Jeremy has come across the start finish line now to take third place in class. Smolder looks like he'll be taking home fourth, so let's jump back to brake check as he'll be taking a very good, very solid third position in the GT4 class. Smolder there coming through the arena section, whereas Colonel McCoy, he has just come across the line to take fourth position with Marauder just behind him in fifth place. Very good battling there between those two drivers. It was very interesting to see the difference in those two cars. But jumping up, Flaming Parrot surrounded by a whole bunch of cars, and this is actually Maxime Martinez is having a little bit of a look here. There's a little bit of contact there between the Ginetta and the Aston Martin. Flaming Parrot, I'm not too sure who the Aston Martin was. Hopefully that was Carlito, and that's actually gone and affected his position with and battle with Milo. The two LMP3 drivers up in front, running a little bit wide. Flaming Parrot, though, does look like he's going to hold on to fifth position. Maxime Martinez will come home in sixth place, and it looks like that Milo is going to come home in eighth, and Carlito in seventh. Neela will come home in ninth position in the GT4 class, and that is going to be the confirmation of our race results then. So 8 the Ace taking the win, GTR Boat taking second, Jeremy in third, Smolder fourth, Flaming Parrot in fifth position, leading sixth position Maxime Martinez, Andrew Harper in seventh, Brzanczyk in eighth. Ninth position was Ruddy Bird. Bernetto was in 10th. 11th position for Intergalactic Gentleman. and then 12th position for Peaches. So that was your LMP3 field. And then taking a look at our GT4 field, Scott taking the win in the GT4 class, Andrex in 2nd place, Brakecheck in 3rd, Colonel McCoy in 4th, 5th position goes to Marauder, Pushdom was in 6th position, Carlito in 7th place, Milo comes home in 8th, 9th position was Neela, 10th place was TPW, and then Matt Cooley had retired the race to take last overall and 13th in the LMP3 field. So that is our conclusion of the first round here of the Apex Online IMSA Lights Endurance race from Circuit of the Americas. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that action, and hopefully we'll catch you again in the next round next week on Thursday the 31st of January, once again at 8 PM UK time for round 2 at Watkins Glen GP, and that will be a 90-minute race, so a little bit longer than the race here. We'll probably see some pit stops and some race strategy coming into play in that race as well. But thank you very much for all of those tuning in into the live stream and participating in the chat. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching the video. Make sure you hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss out on any future live streams, videos or racing action. I have been Yorkie065. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your week and have a good weekend. But until the next time, thanks again and good night.